So why don't we introduce ourselves, Dave, before we go right into it?
Sure thing.
I'll
My
let you
name
go
is,
first.
okay. Yeah. My name is David Abramowitz. I have I come to you live now from Texas, but my home is Maryland. I've been with Trend Micro for 20 plus years. I've taken a giant drink of the Kool-Aid. I love what we do and give back to the community. So I've been part of the ISKF, Internet Safety for Kids and Families program since its inception, since Lynette planted the seed for this, and just love the interaction, not only with adults, but with kids too. So very happy to be here and co-present with Lynette.
Thanks, Dave. And I'm Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. And Trend Micro, if you're not aware, actually is one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world. We've been around as a company for 30 plus years. And I, like Dave, actually, I've been here 20 years this past fall. So you'll find a lot of us who have loved being a part of this organization. It's extremely international. The work we do is also very international. We founded the program 13, almost 14 years ago now. We're active in 20 countries, and we come to communities like yours in all of those places. Before the pandemic, we used to do it in person, and obviously everything changed. So we've been with our partners, PTO Today, offering this in a virtual format, and it's actually been quite successful for us. I do hope that school districts will consider using technology to enable parents, busy parents, to be involved in the school without having to get in the car or get a babysitter. My kids now are 18 and 15, but having done this work for 14 years, I've seen it all. I've experienced it all. All right, so let's get started here. And if you're just joining us, I encourage you, if you're just joining us, please sign in the link that is in the chat if you're just joining us, so that we know who's here. All right.
And Lynette, you want me to cue the Q&A to you as they come up, or do we want people just to put in chat? How you want to do?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, actually, we're going to talk about that in a second.
Sorry.
In addition to signing in, as Dave stole the thunder, submit your questions using the Q&A. That way we can actually monitor that a little more easily than the chat. And when you exit the Zoom, a survey is going to pop up, very short. So we'll talk about that later on, but we'd love your feedback. So let's get started with this so we get to know who you are. Dave?
All right, so Lynette is going to put a poll up, which you should see. So give us an idea. How old is your oldest child? Pick A if your oldest child is 5 years old or younger. B for 6 to 10. C, 11 to 14. D, 15 years or older. And let's see.
Yeah, we've got a majority here.
Yep, we sure do.
All right, let's share this. So it looks like the 11 to 14 is where most of you are, and a few with the 15 and older. So great. That gives us a good sense of where we might want to spend more of our time. And we certainly will probably be able to predict some of the questions you'll be asking. So we're ready for it. Okay, we got another one.
Yep. All right, second poll. What are you most interested in learning today in this session? So A, managing screen time for your kids. B, helping your kids stick to age-appropriate content. C, dealing with online bullying or hate. D, ideas for positive uses of the internet. Or E, I don't know, I'm just here to learn something new.
A, B, C, or D. Or E, sorry, A, B, C, D, or E. That's great. Okay, it looks like we have everybody who
Yep, everybody's chimed in.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit of everything. Good, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit about everything. But since we have a nice small group tonight, we will be sure to stop and take your questions throughout to make it as interactive as possible. So hello to everyone. All right, Dave, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. So a lot has changed in the past 18 months. Lynette and I were just talking. I just got on my first flight to come to Texas since January of 2019. So all good. Nobody mad or punching each other on the flight. Some things have not changed. Our kids still need our guidance. Just like if they were driving a car, right? We don't just say, here's the keys, go drive, right? They have to take driving lessons and written exams and driving tests. So still the internet should be like this too. The risks are still there, just like in real life. There are places we got to watch out where to go. Same thing online. And the benefits are still there, right? So we want to make sure that our kids are taking advantage of all the good that's on the internet too. Good digital citizenship, which is what we strive for, is still very much a priority for us and hopefully for you too.
So how do we define digital citizenship? It actually is made up of 4 parts. And a lot of times people focus on this first one, which is just talking about what are the risks? What should I know about so that my kid doesn't get in trouble? Risks and how to avoid them. But digital citizenship also includes other things. Digital literacy is literally, how does it all work? If I know that my privacy could be at risk, how do I protect it? Where are the privacy settings? How do I turn that on? How can I, as a parent, make sure that my child's privacy is protected? It includes how we behave towards others, and how we behave for our own benefit as well. What are the rules of behavior when you're on different online spaces? Finally, it includes mastery. And what we mean by that is very often when we're talking to kids about their use of technology, it's a long laundry list of what not to do. We have to remember that in addition to making sure that they're safe and telling them what they shouldn't do, we're encouraging the things that they should be doing with technology, the things that are positive for them in the end, the things that are going to help them in their futures or even others around them or the world at large. So we have to remember that includes all of those things. And the way that we like to cover these topics is through a format that we use with you as parents, but when we used to have the opportunity to come into classrooms, we did the same with kids. We talked about it a little differently depending on the age, but this is largely the way that we organize what we talk about. The first is about being online. And what that means is, how do you as parents make sure that you've set up the right environment, set the rules, and set a good example for them? And being safe, it's about protecting privacy, personal information, and even their physical selves. Being kind, this is obvious in some ways. It's about how you treat others, but increasingly as the spaces our children go online are social, the increasing anxiety and worries that are fraught in places like social media are, as we know from reports of Instagram and other research, that places like social media are starting to become unhealthy in some ways for children. So we have got to teach our kids not just to be kind to others, but also to themselves. And finally, we'll talk about the mastery piece. How do we help kids be savvy with the technology? And that means encouraging good habits and good uses. So Dave, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so let's talk first about setting up the environment. You may not think about this a lot, but our physical health is an important part of this. So we like to say for eyes, especially with lighting, the rule is every 30 minutes, take a 30-second break and look 30 feet ahead, right? That's the formula, Lynette? There you go. And blue light glasses, which I didn't even know about before looking at this presentation a while back, are a good idea too, to have your eyes adjust correctly and not put too much strain on them. Seating, obviously you want to have a nice chair. Most of our kids have these great gaming chairs, right? So that they're comfortable gaming, but the idea is the same. You want to have a seat that gives you good posture, and remembering to take breaks. So for those of you fortunate enough to have something like an Apple Watch, it will chirp at you every so often, hey, it's time to stand up, which is actually a good reminder, but there are ways to set those kinds of reminders too. But
Yeah,
very
and
important to take breaks.
mine tells me to breathe. I can't
Oh,
believe it has
breathe.
to
Yeah,
tell me
that's
to
on there
breathe.
too. That's
But
right.
I will say we work really closely with the Digital Wellness Lab, and in their most recent research among parents across the United States, pediatricians, and maybe some of your kids are in this group, because there was an increased use of screens, and we really had to do it because we were in a pandemic. They're seeing far more cases of kids having eye strain and neck aches, things they had never seen before the previous 18 months. So anything you can do to encourage all of the things that Dave talked about is going to be really important. The blue light glasses, you can buy like packs of them on Amazon for fairly inexpensive. Some are expensive, but they're not prescription. They're just like sunglasses.
And what better way to teach responsibility at the same time? If you have a dog, then the break could be, hey, go take the dog out for a walk every so often. That's my excuse. Okay, so setting up the environment, all the geeky stuff that us techies like. Number one, limit access to your router. Now, some of you may never have gone near your router. Maybe you don't even know where it is. You just know you have internet in the house, but there is a device plugged into a jack, probably hidden somewhere in a closet or gathering dust on the floor somewhere. That is your router that allows for internet access to all the devices. And it comes with, on the back, usually there's a sticker that has the administrator and the password. Well, you don't want someone just to be able to come in your house, look at that, and later log into your router and mess around with all your settings and do bad stuff. So changing the password on your router is a very good immediate thing to do when you bring it home. The second thing is another thing that you may not know about is most of the routers today, especially the home ones that you get from Verizon or any of the other internet Comcast, any of the other internet providers, will have separation between the main network and something called a guest network. Now, why is that important? Well, so many of us are working at home now, and we're bringing our work machines or using even our personal machines for work, whatever the case. But our companies don't want that data to be mixed in with the doorbells and the fans and the air conditioning and the toasters and all the things that are plugged into smart switches, plus your kids' game consoles. So it's important to secure the data. One easy way is just to put your work device on the main network. Everything else is on the guest network. So take a look at your router. Those settings will be there to be able to give you a guest network to use. A Wi-Fi extender, extending the wireless network. Some of you, if you live in multi-level homes, may not, and your router's on the first level, you may not get a very good signal up to the third. So the companies that give you internet access also provide extenders. You can also buy them pretty much anywhere just to extend the range of the wireless network since it's going to be used a lot at home. And another thing is to stagger the use time, right? If you're doing something very important for work during certain hours, you don't want those same hours to be when all of your kids are streaming videos and Netflix and playing heavy online games and that sort of thing. So sort of assigning staggered times for those things is helpful as well. And the next step, of course, what good would be if we didn't tell you this, is to secure everything. Using security on all your devices may seem like an obvious thing, but you may not know that there are pieces of software for your phone, or that the PS5 or the Xbox can also have security on them or parental controls. Number two, turn on your firewall. This is your traffic cop, right? On your router it's gonna let in traffic that you want and not allow traffic that you don't, and the same going out. So important to use the firewall just to make sure that everything coming in and going out is what you expect. Strong passwords. You don't want to use anything that's easily guessable because password cracking programs that not so nice people will try to put on your machine to guess your password can guess something that is a word, but it's not spelled the same as it would be. So try to especially use spaces and special characters upper and lowercase, all the usual things, right, to make it much more difficult to be guessed. Multi-factor authentication, if you're not familiar, basically means something you know and something you have. Now, if you've ever logged in to, like, say, your online banking, maybe when you log in, it sends a text message to your phone also to make sure you're you. That's multi-factor authentication. The something you know is your password, and the something you have is your cell phone, so that they can make sure it's really you logging into the service. And the last thing is using a virtual private network, which basically takes the communication leaving your machine and going out to the internet and secures it inside a nice little private tunnel so that nobody can poke into there and see what that traffic is all about.
Yeah, and I would say, I would just add to on this, if you aren't currently using security software on every device connecting to the internet, you really need to do that, because the cyber criminals know how much more we've all been spending time on the internet. It's really ridiculous how much more time everyone started to use it over the last 18 months. So they know this, and they're trying to take advantage of this, including the devices your kids are using. So make sure you're using protection on everything. If
Yeah.
you want advice on where to get the best ones, do a search for the top 10. Trend has products in both, security software as VPN, but you might already have something on your computer. If you haven't updated it and paid for that update, please make sure you're updating that. The cyber criminals are super active right now.
Yeah, especially because they know that your kid's device is on the same network probably as your work laptop. So what a great way to be able to get to you through some weakness in their device. Practicing good habits, update for sure. It may seem like there are so many updates all the time, but a lot of them aren't just for improvements and bug fixes, but they're for security reasons too. So make sure you're updating your devices when they're available. Talked about passwords, making them a phrase, change it often. Yes, it's a pain in the butt, but there are some good programs on both operating Mac and Windows that will actually store your passwords and encrypt them so that they can automatically be filled in and things like that. But just make it a little more complicated than password is very preferable. And don't forget to back up and store everything. The good rule about this is use an online service if you can, iCloud or whatever other service you want to use. There are plenty of online backup services. The important part is also to back up, if you can, to an external drive, a USB drive. They're pretty cheap these days. And if you want to be really good about it, take that backup and put it somewhere else physically. Take it to mom and dad's or your brothers or sisters or whoever's house. That just is one extra step to make sure that your data is safe, just in case something goes bad online. You have the physical. In case the physical goes bad, you have the online.
Okay. And, sort of just moving on to other kinds of tech tools. We're still on, talking about setting up the environment. This is all the kind of things you want to make sure you're doing in your home, because even some of your kids, they might be 11, but they might still click on something that they didn't mean to. And all of a sudden they've downloaded something onto your computer or your home network that wreaks havoc in some way. And sometimes it's not so obvious right away. But there are other tech tools. Some of you in the poll early on said, I'm worried about them sticking to stuff that's okay for their ages. So we're going to talk about some of those tools that can actually help with limiting their time they're spending on it, limiting the kinds of people they can connect with, not kinds, but the fact that they can connect with people they don't know or not. So these can exist within routers. Your ISP might actually offer it for not for free, but that might be an option for you through them. Security software, if you're already using that on any laptop or iPad or whatever, it's called parental controls. Sometimes it's called family settings. Sometimes it's called digital wellness, as you'll see in a minute. Sometimes it's just called screen time. as you'll also see in a minute. So here's a few examples. And I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but I've asked you to put in the chat here. Is anyone using, is your family or your children using iOS devices? You can put that in the chat. Who's an Apple family?
iPhone, iPad.
You can put
Apple
it in the
TV.
chat. Anybody in iOS? Yeah. Yep, iPhones. We'll talk about Android in a minute too, if you're not an iOS family, if you're not an Apple family. Yep, phones, iPads. Yep, super popular. And so, if you're not already anyone familiar with screen time, you can put that in the chat. Anyone using screen time with their children? Okay,
Yep.
great. Some of you are good. So if you're not familiar with it already, it's basically their way of giving you some control over what they can do with those Apple devices. You have to set up your child on an Apple account underneath yours. And you'll see here, this is my phone and my kids. And you basically can, it's really strange if you've looked at this. You can not only see how long they were spending on an app, you can see how many times they picked up the phone. It is crazy what Apple is tracking, by the way. And not just Apple, every tech company is doing this, right? But the fact that they can report that back to you means they've been watching very closely almost everything you're doing on that device. And not just you, your kids too. So, if you're not already familiar with screen time, take a look at it. It gives you lots of capabilities to limit time, to limit the kinds of apps they can download, to limit how much time they can spend on a specific app. Now, for those of you who are the Android families out there, just let us know in the chat. Any kids using Android phones? Samsung? I don't know, I'm not an Android, I'm an iPhone person, but yep, we have somebody who raised hand. Great. So if you're not familiar with it already, Google came up with their answer to Apple screen time. It's called Google Family Link. Okay. Google Family Link is actually a separate app that you would download, and it allows you to limit a lot of the same things that Apple screen time does. So it's free, by the way. Both of these things that we just talked about are free. You can filter apps by the age limit. You can limit their screen time in general. And if they're using a mobile device, you can actually physically track where they're going. Although I know a lot of people use Life 360 as well, but in either case, Google's is free. And YouTube, anybody's kids ever use YouTube? Probably not, right?
Who uses
Just
YouTube?
kidding. Yeah. So thank goodness earlier this year, they announced YouTube supervised account. And this is for anybody, Apple or Google, doesn't matter what device you use. If your kids use YouTube and you worry about the stuff they might see on it, I highly recommend you set up a YouTube supervised account. Again, you just need a Google account. You go into the settings for YouTube supervised account, and you can decide based on your children's age whether they're allowed to see Explore, which is usually up to age, I think they're saying about 11, Explore More, which would be around up to 14, 15 years old, and then most of YouTube, which would take you up to 17, but not the adult content. All right. So thank goodness YouTube launched this not too long ago. I highly recommend you use it because I think probably every child in the world uses YouTube. And everybody knows you never know what's coming next. After you watch one video, you have no idea what might be coming next. We certainly had a lot of jump scares in movies. TikTok. Never heard of it? Yeah, maybe. Anybody's kids using TikTok yet? Any parents using TikTok?
Oh,
Yeah.
2 raised hands, 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Some of you might not be ready, and so if this might not be you, but if you know anybody who has children who are younger, they're not quite ready to allow their kids to use TikTok, I will just let you know very quickly. Okay, we have a no. At some point, you will say yes because they'll be old enough, right? But that's okay if you're not ready now. TikTok was the first to do this. They actually launched this right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's called TikTok Family Pairing. And what it allows you to do is actually download TikTok on your device, download it on the kid's device, and you can decide what kind of content they can see, how long they can be on it, and even the kinds of whether or not anyone can contact them or not. So you will find it in a place called digital well-being. They call it digital well-being, family pairing, designate one of them as the parent, the other one as the teen. And here you can see you can limit all kinds of things. I've tested it, and you mostly just see animals and senior citizens dancing, and it's pretty harmless. I'm sure, like many tools, it's not perfect, but it's definitely better than nothing. So for those of you who said no, this is a way to ease you and your child into the TikTok experience. I have to imagine that you have children here using Roblox. Anybody's kids using Roblox? Let us know in the chat. Yep. They just went public this June, or I think it was this June, and they just had a rocking quarter. No surprise. If you've ever had a chance to use it or see your children use it, you can see how creative, how wonderful, and why they get so drawn into this platform of games, because they can not only play games, but they can develop them too.
Mhm.
And I think it is quite useful and wonderful. But if you're not already familiar with all of their settings, make sure you've set everything that Dave was talking about, two-factor authentication. Every app that we're going to talk about has it. If your children's account doesn't have two-factor or multi-factor set up, please do it. Okay, a password is not enough. This is that secondary protection.
And
Now,
you saw they're called two-step. It may be called other things, but it's the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Same idea, though. Yeah. Now, the one thing that, if you're not aware of all the apps, I would say Roblox is the best at watching the chatting among people on their platform. Okay. So, yeah, in fact, someone asked here, is there a way to limit the chat? It's in the settings. You can actually decide who can actually chat with them within a game, within the actual app, and so on. So take a look at that, please, and use it today. But the one thing that Roblox does better than others is they've put in a lot of money behind, they're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to monitor chats. So if someone were to ask your child in the game, hey, what's your address? It will never go up. Address, phone number, date of birth, none of it will ever go up because they're using machine learning. They also have human moderators who are also watching all of this. Is it perfect? No, but just know that they are one of the better ones out there. Discord, anybody here of Discord? Dave, are you using Discord?
Yeah, mostly just all for work communication, but not for personal use.
Yeah. So Discord's actually been around for a while, and it was kind of the domain of gamers, really, who were using it to chat with each other. But it became super popular over the last 18 months because it's basically an Uber chatting app, right? You can create group chats, but then it's social because you could join big public group chats about stuff that you love, maybe Harry Potter or Marvel Cinematic Universe or whatever. So just be aware that if you're not familiar, if your kid's ever asking to use an app you're not familiar with, do a little homework. And the next thing you should really look into is how are they handling protecting your privacy? These are just screenshots that ways that you could protect your privacy or block other people on it if they're sort of bothering you, or reporting them too.
And Discord has video and audio live, so
yeah. So you want to be very careful, and everybody's moving to video shortly, and audio. Even Twitter's going to be moving there. Anybody's kids use the Xbox? Just so you know, they also launched a new app last fall called Xbox Family Settings. It's a separate app so that if your children are using the Xbox in another room and you want to limit the time, you just can do it from your app. You don't have to go to the console in another part of the house and interrupt them there. They can ask you for more time and you say no. They can ask you if they can download another game. You can say yes. It's up to you. But the nice thing is you can do it from your phone and not at the device. Okay. Finally, these are all great. Really glad that all of them have developed these things, but we're a technology company too, and we noticed that, as good as it is, there's still a lot of needs for parents out there. And so what we decided to do was develop a free tool to you, Trend Micro Family. It's called tmfamily.cares, where you can find it. Please give it a try. We'd love your feedback. We want to build it based on what you need. But one of the things that we're trying to do is make it easier for you. Today, you have to go to all those apps and set all that up. What we're trying to do is build one place where you can just do it in a single place rather than have to go to Xbox, have to go to Roblox, have to go to Instagram. It does other things too, but I'll just keep it brief. Any questions so far?
I didn't see any in the Q&A.
Okay, great. Use the Q&A if you do have questions. All right, Dave, I'll hand this to you.
Okay, so next we want to talk about setting the rules. What device or devices can be used? When is it appropriate to use those? Is it for school? Is it for personal? Is it during the day? Is it everything gets cut off at 9 p.m.? What are the rules? How long can they be used for? Can you play games for an hour a night, 3 hours, 2 hours on the weekend, all that kind of thing? And where? Right? Is it somewhere that is public, where like a desktop machine that's sitting out in the living room? Is it a laptop they can take into their bedroom if they want? And with whom, right? So is it only friends that they can play games with and communicate with, friends or relatives, or is it, what are the rules around that? If all these things are important to set down.
So Mike, I have a question for everyone on the line. Do you have any rules that work for you? Put in the chat. Are there any rules that work really well in your house? I always love to get good ideas. I remember at sleepovers, before the kids went to bed, which they never went to sleep, the phones had to stay up with me. All the kids' phones, right? They don't need to have the phones with them. I'm not sure a lot of people during sleepovers still yet, these days, but if you are, I would always keep the phones with me because I'd tell them, your parents don't, if they need to reach you, they'll call me. You don't need your phones yet.
We're in charge, so here's where they will charge.
Great. Using screen time on the Xbox, yeah, please do use the screen time.
That's an important one too,
yeah.
Right? And adults are just as guilty that I've seen of that as kids, right? Because we watch TV before we go to bed, we're on the devices before we go to bed, and all of that stimulates your brain and makes it much harder for you to fall asleep. So
Absolutely.
that's a good rule to cut it off before bedtime.
Since the pandemic, a lot of limits disappeared. Yeah, I know. You know what? You're not alone. You're not alone, Bonnie. This is something that every parent is dealing with, and I think it'd be okay to sit down and say we need to have a conversation about the rules now that things have changed again. I think that's okay, and I think having your kids help develop some of the rules with you, even what the consequences are. Have them be a part of that because they're more apt to stick to ones they came up with. If they have siblings, doing it together so then they can police each other instead of you having to do it.
And there are tech solutions for this as well, right? If you have a particularly stubborn child who doesn't want to get off the PlayStation and it's 11 o'clock and you're trying to sleep, right? We are in control via the router or other apps where we can say, hey, at 11 p.m., the PS4 loses internet connectivity, and that's the end of that. So
yes.
Yeah,
you could also
get to that point.
Just good old pull the plug. Right. And I do want to share something though about screen time, because some of you had said in the poll that screen time was of a concern. So this is this is an exercise that again, working with the Digital Wellness Lab, who are made up of lots of pediatricians who actually think that this is a good, healthier way to think about screen time. It's called the 24-hour exercise. And with younger kids, it might work better. With older, it might just be a conversation. But starting to think about, and this is actually good for us too, even us as adults. When you think about a whole 24 hours, ask your child, about all the other things they have to do in a day and how many hours actually they're doing those things. So the first would be, what are the things we're doing to support our physical health? How much time? How much time is that? Is that 8, 10 hours? When you sleep, have meals, exercise, spend time outdoors, how many hours? And then on top of that, how much time are you spending to support yourself as a learner? How many hours are you in school doing homework? Maybe you're practicing an instrument or another hobby that you really like, but it's, reading, all those things that are good for our brain, right? As learners. On top of that, how many hours are you spending to support the relationships that are important in your life? So some of that actually might be on screens. It could be FaceTime with grandparents. That's okay, because that's supporting relationships, right? Now you add all that up and you say, okay, I've done all of these things in a day that are actually really good and healthy for me. So now there might be time left over. And I think this is as much for a child to think about as it is for us as parents to give ourselves a little bit of a break and not feel guilty if we have said yes to some screen time. Again, because if they're doing all these other things, it's okay. Having said that, if the orange box is 6 hours, that does not mean you use the Xbox for 6 hours. And that's where the tools we talked about and the rules that you set can help you manage what they're doing in that orange box time. So some great suggestions from parents that I've heard over the years are, maybe with younger ones this works better, but give them options of what they could do with that free time. Some of those options should not be screen time. It could just be, playing games outside or riding a bike or whatever. Just a way to think about screen time in the context of a whole day rather than just focusing on screen time. The last thing I will say is all of the research we have seen so far suggests that it's less about screen time and more about what they're doing on the screens. It is far more important to focus on what it is they're actually doing while they're there. So, schools now are requiring kids to be online. If you just added that screen time for school, that's already a lot, right? But everybody needs downtime. So it's okay to say yes. Now, I know some parents have rules of no video games during the week, or they limit the amount of time and only after homework is done. Whatever works for you and your child, I think, is okay. But that's a way to think about screen time.
We do have one question, Lynette. Is there
Yeah,
an ability to block just certain channels on YouTube? Some seem age appropriate, but are not what I want to be viewed in our home. It's
yeah.
not vulgar, so it does not get blocked automatically.
That's a great question. And I think the YouTube supervised settings is basically a proxy for that. I don't know that I don't know that supervised settings. I don't know for sure if you can actually choose specific categories of videos. But that's what they're doing basically. So I would give it a try. And the three settings again were explore, explore more, and explore almost everything. I forgot the name of the third one. Give those settings a try and see what kinds of videos are showing up, because basically what YouTube is doing is creating a fence around videos based on you picking one of those three. It's called YouTube supervised settings. Supervised account, sorry, supervised account in YouTube. All right, Dave.
And so, what we want to look at here is the kids are obviously going to learn by what they see and what they experience us doing, right? So, let's put in the chat, what rules do you have for yourself? What are some of the things that you've set up for your own rules in the
What are yours,
house, or
Dave?
how you would set the example? Yeah.
Do you have any for yourself, Dave?
Me, well, certainly no devices at the meal table if we're actually having a meal together, which we try to do. And most of my kids are actually all my kids are out now. But when they were in and had the devices, no devices during mealtime, and because that's our time to talk about the day and talk about life and everything else. So
Yeah, yeah,
not a
we're the
time to
same.
be texting or checking. Anybody have anything that they have for themselves? I also monitor. You know what? I get the things from iOS Screen Time too, and I if it says that I've been using less screen time, I'm like, okay, good. At least I'm on the right path.
Do you give yourself a brownie?
Yes, I go in the kitchen and have a cookie.
You deserve it.
And then
Yeah.
it says you're eating too many cookies. Like, yeah, how do they know that?
Yeah, that's when the watch comes in and goes, you
Yeah.
need to go for a walk. Close that circle.
Your
Close that
motions
circle.
indicate eating a cookie. So let's see. We have
Yeah,
when kids are talking, put the phone down.
I like that one. Face down too.
Yeah.
Face down. Yeah, because you know those little alerts can distract your eyes when you see the alerts come on your
Ontario
phone.
says I set screen time limits for myself. Great. Yeah. And
Great.
I have dogs and that's my best. I got to get out of here and away from the screen because who wants
Yeah.
to be in meetings all day anyway? So,
And you know what? If you don't have a rule for yourself, don't worry. I mean, don't feel bad about it. I think it's just most important to remember if we're expecting of them, they follow what we do, not what we say.
right, exactly. So to go along with this modeling behavior, right? If I take the iPad into the bathroom to do crossword puzzles, probably bad example. Right? We don't want to encourage sitting in the bathroom too long either. So those are those kinds of things too. Do I put the phone down like Delterio was saying when the kids are talking? Hey, this you're more important than whatever I'm doing here on the phone at the moment. So how we model the behavior is really important. If we say no phones allowed at mealtime and then the phone rings and we get up from the table to go get the phone, those are things we need to be conscious of.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, I'll let you take this away.
All right, next section. By the way, I don't think I mentioned what I do at Trend Micro. I'm the regional technical lead for the Mid Atlantic and Federal regions. So I've been a techie guy here for forever in pre-sales. So I eat, live, and breathe technical and toys. So protecting privacy. The big thing here is to use the privacy settings because you may not even know they exist. And oh, by the way, if they exist, they're very likely not turned on by default. So here we're showing an example of Fortnite, a game your kids might be familiar with. And they are in there. They might be a little buried, but when you go into the settings here in the upper right, then privacy, setting privacy, because there are chats, there are a number of things going on. So who are they allowed to chat and interact with? So the privacy settings are in there. Very important to seek and find them because nobody wants you to have them on. Now, the plain truth is there is no privacy on the internet. And we know this because every app we download, like Snapchat here, there's a big, long license agreement. And what do? We just do next, 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 accept. What you're accepting may not be what you actually want to accept. And in this case in particular, what you're agreeing to is yes, you own your content, but what you post can be used whenever, wherever, and for whatever Snapchat or whoever has this agreement wants to. So sometimes we ask our kids when we do presentations for kids, we say, what apps do you use and are they free? And they say, yeah, we don't pay for them. You pay for them. We pay for them with our privacy. Nothing is free. They're going to reuse that content in any way they see fit. So very important to know that even though we're just hitting that accept button real quick, thinking that there's nothing really harmful in there, we are trading our privacy. So safe to assume nothing is private online. Secondly is about protecting information. So when something big happens in the world, somebody famous dies, or there's something else happening somewhere else in the world, the bad people know that everyone's going to go online and Google it to get information. And through a bunch of different mechanisms, they can have their search results pop up higher and higher in the results so that when you click on them, those aren't the actual places you think you're going. So that's what poison search results is about. Free offers. When my son was little, God bless him, he saw something like this almost like that exact ad pop up when he was working online. And All he needed for to get the free iPad as he came running and screaming to me was my credit card number, and I had to explain to him why that was not necessarily a good idea and why free is not free, etc. High interest content that might be a new movie coming out, a new game, and the only way to see it is by clicking on this video downloader, and you'll see the preview before anyone will. Yes, you will, and you'll also get some things that you didn't want installed on your machine that will start stealing your information or recording your keystrokes, all that kind of fun stuff. Something to watch out for too is fake social media posts. Now, what happens here is if somebody's account, let's say I'm friends with Lynette on Facebook, and I get this in my feed and it says breaking news, Lady Gaga found dead in hotel room. And I'm like, nah, this is, oh, wait a second. Above that, it's fuzzed out, but it says Lynette Owens liked this link. I'm saying, well, Lynette's my friend. If she's my friend and she liked it, this must be legit. And then the initiative is to go clicking on the link, which of course is not taking you to somewhere real, and nor is the story real. Again, another attempt to just harvest and collect personal information for evil means, nefarious means, maybe just for targeted advertising that you don't want, but it's all in the name of collecting information.
Yeah, and that's why, and some of it isn't. Some of it's actually because they're trying to get you to download malicious software. So this is why we said earlier, using security software on every device that your children are using and you is really important. It will largely protect them from these issues because let's say they go to a link
Yeah,
that's malicious, they'll get blocked. They won't be able to go there. So,
right. And all of these cases are examples of you're going to eventually click on a link to get what you want or to go where you think you want to go, and that link will be checked, like Lynette said. All
all right, we're
right.
going to do another poll here and I will launch that in a second.
Do any of your kids have their own cell phone? I'm going to add to this just for fun. So when you answer that question, if anyone wants to put in the chat, if you have a rule for how old they are before they're allowed to have one, I'd be curious as to what that was.
Yeah. Oh, there is a C. Someone put C in the chat. So not yet, but soon. Okay.
Okay.
I think especially for those of you who said you maybe the younger end of 11 to 14, you're thinking about it, right?
Yeah,
But
there's a ton of pressure sometimes on the kids, and they see other kids using one and having fun and giggling. It's like, why can't I have one?
yeah.
All
All right.
kinds.
Okay. So most of you said yes. That's great. And you asked a question too, Dave.
Yeah,
How old were they when you bought the phone?
right.
Put it in the chat. Do you want to know how old mine were? So mine were the age that when they started middle school
Hmm.
because they had to get on a bus for the first time. And but we did a prepaid Go phone. So it's through AT&T and it was a smartphone, but you put just like $25 on it at a time. And we limited only 3 numbers and they could only use other stuff when they were on Wi-Fi at home. They couldn't use it for anything other than text on the bus until they got older and, they showed us they, could be responsible. So
I
oldest was
mean,
11.
yeah, 12. Yeah, it is incredible to me that most of the kids, even when they have an iPhone, let's say, they do everything on it except make phone calls. It's not the actual phone function isn't even used.
Right. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think it's
it's totally hard to buckle. Yeah, the pressure is big,
no, stay strong, stay
but you
strong,
gotta stay strong.
stay strong. Do what's right for your family. Don't feel the
Yeah,
pressure. Yeah. And if you need to get it for them, if there's a sort of family reasons, it's really up to every family and what's right for them. So
yeah. My son was your age too once, 9, and he tried some funny stuff on me. I said, I will go out to the Apple store right now and I will buy you an iPhone if you can give me one real reason why you have to have it. And so he said, well, what if I'm riding my bicycle and a tree falls and it knocks me off my bicycle? And I have to have a phone. And so, well, if you're on your stomach and you're under a tree, how are you going to get to your phone? So we had fun with that one, but
Nice try.
they'll try everything they can.
Yeah. Just get them an Xbox instead.
That's right. Or
That's
make
the
them real
real,
upset and just give them an
yeah.
iPod Touch and say, you're just going to text anyway. You're not going to make phone calls.
Well, I think this is it's I think that the question, I've been asked this so many times over the years, how can you tell me how old my child should be before I give them the phone? That way, when I go home, I can tell them that you said that they can't have a phone until they're whatever age. And I would love to be able to do that for you, Dave, and I would, but really it is up to you as a family and what your needs are. But
Yeah.
I think, as we'll talk about later on, it's important that we understand every family has different rules about a lot of things, not even just technology, and that we respect that of each other. We encourage our children to respect that of each other, you know. I do want to say this though, since most of you said yes about the phones, and specifically about one thing about their phone that every kid loves, and that's the camera. And I think we should have fun with it. If your kids are using Instagram or they're taking selfies, whatever, that's great. Use it for fun. Do it for good reasons. But there is something that I think we have to talk about. If you haven't had this conversation with your children, you should. And this is why. We do work very closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, with In Hope, which is another organization similar to them, and others around the world. And over the last 18 months, unfortunately, they have seen an enormous rise in self-produced images that they wouldn't want the whole world seeing. Okay. And not in all cases were kids being coerced to take those by strangers. In fact, in many cases, many young people are asked by a peer. And to them, it may feel very normal to show that you like someone, that you have a crush on them, when they ask you to send them a nude. And I think it's really important that if you're not having conversations with your kids about this, you should, because this increase has happened because of the pandemic. Everybody's been online. Perhaps they were, starting to build social relationships that way. And they don't necessarily have to be with people much older than them. It could be people their own age. It could be their classmates. So please, if you haven't had that conversation, remind your children to never feel pressured to take images like that, and to understand that even taking the image, even if they never send it, they're putting themselves at risk, because if you're automatically backing up all your family stuff to the cloud, there you go. It's already out of the phone and somewhere else. The second thing I will say is that I had a great question asked of me 7 or 8 years ago by a dad. And he said, and I like to share it with other parents when I get the opportunity. And he said, my son's a really good kid, but what should I do if somebody sends him one, like one of their classmates? What should I do? So my advice to you, and you should have this conversation with your kids as well, and that is, if that ever happens, keep the door open and do not overreact. Make sure they can come to you if that happens. And this is why. Because technically, those images, more importantly, because they're people underage, the possession, the creation, and the distribution of such images is technically a felony. And the problem is that that phone service is being paid by dad or mom, right? Not the son. So it's in your name as their parent. So please make your children feel comfortable to be able to come to you and say, I got one of these and this really bothers me, right? So step one, have them come to you. And step two, delete it. Okay. And even law enforcement will say, don't start sending that around. Okay. I don't know if you've heard this term. It's a really funny one. It's called outrage sharing. We've all done it, or we've all seen people do it. It's called outrage sharing. You see something online, it makes you so mad, and you forward it on to all your friends on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, and you say, can you believe this? And you, right? Outrage sharing is something lots of people do these days. When it comes to images like this, though, do not do that, because again, distribution of this material is technically a felony. You're not necessarily going to be prosecuted the way that, if it's something far more nefarious. But it also means you continue to harm the child that's in that image. So your child, again, if it happens, make sure they can come to you, delete it. Now, you as a parent, if you feel comfortable, you might know the child or their parents, maybe approach them. Now, maybe that's a really uncomfortable conversation. In that case, you might want to report it elsewhere, whether it's to school administration or a counselor at the school, or, I would say law enforcement. The problem is that a lot of police departments are saying this isn't something we have time to be kind of chasing down, but it is a possible place to go. Just don't hold on to it and don't forward it on to anyone, because if there's an investigation, they're already going to know. You don't know who else got the image. So if there's an investigation, they're going to know it went from this IP address to that one. They're going to know it went to your son's device. So make sure you take action. Okay. And the last thing on gaming, I think we kind of covered this already, but because gaming is very social now, I mean, my first game was Atari, Dave. I had an Atari, Space Invaders, and Pong, right? And the only way you could play it socially is for the person sitting right next to you with the other joystick.
Right.
Now, today I can play Fortnite or Minecraft or Call of Duty or whatever with people all over the world. So I think it's, again, making sure privacy settings are on in Roblox, that they're not just chatting to whomever. And if you have kids who struggle to stop gaming, my advice is, in addition to using the screen time filters, try games that actually have times, that time out. So my son likes playing, anybody ever hear of Rocket League? Rocket League is just these cars that just push a soccer ball into a net. You're just playing soccer, but with a car. And eventually the time just runs out and the game is over. So FIFA, Madden football, NBA 2K, those are all timed games. That's a little bit better than the ones that go on forever. Unfortunately, as good as Minecraft is, it doesn't end. It can go on forever. So think about timed games. These next two sections we're going to go pretty quickly on. So I will just say that we talked about kindness and why it's important to do it towards others. Certainly, our behavior used to be just within a playground, right? Or just within a physical space. But now everything we're doing on the internet leaves a little footprint out there about the kind of person we are. So kids should remember that all of their actions, everything they download, click on, like, who they friend, what they watch, what they're surfing, searching, all of it's being collected. Everything, every single thing we're doing is being collected. And so when you add up all those things, it adds up to a picture of who you are. So who is that person? It will reflect on them. And respecting, kindness is not just be nice. It's also respecting things like privacy. Has anyone ever had a friend or someone post a picture on Facebook or Instagram or whatever with you in it, and they didn't ask you? Or maybe even your kids are in it. Did that ever happen to anyone? People posting pictures, right? Maybe a picture you didn't necessarily like and wish wasn't up there. It actually is one of the, especially for kids just starting out in social media, they get so excited, like in a candy store. They start taking pictures and posting online. They take pictures with all their friends, all that stuff. And it's become a source of drama because the one child really likes the picture of them and everybody else is not happy with how they look, but they went ahead and posted it anyway. So here's my recommendation. If you want to avoid this kind of drama, for your children with their close friends. They can start, and you can do this with people you care about and close to too. Say, you know what? Hey, is it okay if I post this? Are you good with that? Start making that a very just normal part of conversation. We do that because in our family, we're into our privacy. And we've told people we'd rather you ask us first before you post that of our kids. So we talked about getting phones and what age you get your phones. Well, everybody, the hardest part of this all is not your rules, but what everybody else's rules are. So this often happens with things like violent video games. Okay, some kids are already playing first-person shooter games at young ages, but you may have said that's not okay in our house. So be forthcoming. If your child's going to go play at someone else's house, to say, hey, we don't allow this game or that game, and don't feel bad about that, because that's what you feel is appropriate for your family. Okay, if other people have that rule, respect those rules of their own. I think just in general too, as parents, our kids are going to not necessarily become victims of bullying. I know there was somebody on here who was interested to talk about this. It happens, but what we might call bullying as adults is not necessarily what young people might call it. They might just call it drama. It is actually more likely that your child will not be a victim of it, but they will witness it. Okay? They might witness someone else experiencing unkindness from others. So it is far more likely that that will be your child, that they witness it. So we, as their parents, should remind them that you can do something about it too, even if it's not directed at you. You don't have to come back at the bully. There are other things you can do as well. You can, separately talk to the person who's being harmed to say, don't listen to them. You're a great person, ignore them, right? You could report them. Kids actually are very, very savvy about this already. Most social media sites have a reporting button. And then blocking is another option. Just block them. I saw recent research from, I can't remember if it was the Cyberbullying Research Center, but it turns out that kids are more apt to use block than report. And the reason is that I don't think social media companies have done a great job of telling us what happens after we report it. Sometimes it feels like nothing happens. So blocking is a way to just stop it, to stop that behavior, having to see it, having to deal with that person, And if they ever do experience it, make sure you're there for them. All of the research shows that all children who experience adversity online, the ones who bounce back the best are the ones who have support systems around them. Whether that's you or a good group of friends or a teacher they really trust in school, the children who bounce back the best are the ones who have great support systems around them. So be that support system. And as bad as we can say the internet can be, good things happen there too. I'm a big fan of the Good News Network. I like to follow them because those feel-good stories that you almost never see in your feed, they're good at actually putting those forward. If you ever see something really nice and good online, share those stories with your kids. Share those stories so they know not everybody online is angry or crazy or mad all the time. And finally, directing kindness inward. That I mentioned this earlier, because kids are on social media a lot more. It's hard to regulate this, so we as parents have to be very involved. They should not equate the number of likes, followers, friend requests that they're getting to their own value. We have to remind them that they're worth far more than that. Okay, but even we as adults, when you post something on Facebook and people like it, how does that make you feel? Feels good. It's very affirming, right? And children, because they're children, their brains are at a certain stage of development. When they feel bad, they feel really bad. When they feel good, they feel really good. So you want to go towards those things that make you feel really, really good. So we've got to remind our kids that their value is not equal to any of those things. That's up to us. Bringing it home here, Dave. Being savvy. What's some good habits? I'll take it here and then I'll hand it over to you next. So, real quick, it's really easy it's hard to know what to trust anymore. You don't even know what you could trust anymore. Is that a bot, a real person? I have no idea. Someone could open an account and follow you, and you have no idea if that person's for real. So one thing we recommend is do a reverse image search on Google, and you can see if that image has showed up in other places. Actually, if you ask your kids about that, the kids in the classrooms I've been in are so savvy. They're the ones who would tell me this if I asked them. What would you do to figure out if that's a bot or a catfish? I do a reverse image search. They're all pretty savvy. Other things that we potentially can't trust is things like, in news or even advertising. And so I'll just quickly say that we're big proponents and we're partners with the National Association for Media Literacy Education. Misinformation has just become this kitchen table word now that I never believed 2 years ago would ever be the case, but it is. And it's making its way through any kind of topic, even ones that your kids talk about. So it's not just something adults are being subjected to, it's kids too. So asking questions, pausing, don't like it, don't share it, don't even respond to it. Why don't you figure out if it's real or not yet? So we recommend using our Parents Guide to Media Literacy Education. We actually created it with Namely, and it's something that we've got great scenarios in there of how would you approach it with your kid if they said, hey, I saw this ad for this great, new sneaker or whatever. It says that if I do this, I'll get something free as well. So it gives you scenarios of how you can have good conversations with your kids. So they're not so easily fooled by everything they see online. Dave?
Yeah, so something fun to do. How many of you have actually Googled yourself to find out who your cyber twin is if you want to start monitoring when your name is mentioned? Oh, two people raised their hands. Oh, it's a fun exercise. So I did it just a few days ago. I think we have the results. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. So I am the co-chair of Locklord's FDA regulatory group. I'm also the principal in the Abramelli group, advocating for shared humanity and equal opportunity. I'm an actor. I'm a lawyer. I've been in Highlander, MacGyver, and V. Ooh, V was a cool show. So it's important to know who else is out there with my name and where I might see my name being posted and for what purposes. So if I know, for instance, these are some of my cyber twins, I might be expecting some of these things. But you can actually monitor certain things online using Google. You can set up, if you just go to google.com/alerts, you can set up an alert for pretty much anything that you want to be notified about. So if I want to know every time Trend Micro is mentioned in a posting or anything online, I can create an entry for that and pick my settings for how often I want to be told about it, what kinds of sources I want to include in the search, the language, the region, how many times do I actually want to be notified. So you can set that up for yourself for anything that you want to get more information or be notified of when it's posted.
And your kids too.
And the kids.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that the stuff that would show up in Google is publicly indexable stuff. So anything that's posted behind privacy settings, not going to show up here. Okay, so you can rest assured that's another reason why you want to use privacy settings is stuff that's behind privacy settings would not show up in a Google search.
Okay, 65%. Who knows what that is? What that indicates? Take a stab. Kaplan Institute. See, the diploma and the books might be a hint there, 65%. That is the percentage of, and I always get one thing about this wrong with it.
Yeah.
The percentage of universities who have used social media to get more information about an applicant.
Yeah, or just looking them up in general. It could
Just
be on
looking them
social
up to
media.
get,
Yeah.
who is this kid that wants to come to my university or college? 65% of them
Yeah.
said that they have actually done this kind of search.
Actually, I think it's 65% said they would do it.
Oh, they would
That
do
they
it.
would
Okay,
do
they
it.
would
Yes.
do
And
it. Okay.
when they started tracking this in 2014, it was only 25%. So it's just gone up every year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have seen stories locally in my area about an athlete that got a scholarship, but when the university went online and discovered some things about her that they didn't care for, they dropped the scholarship. So it's really, we didn't have this when we were kids. Like the things that we did were a permanent mark on us. There's no delete and there's no I'm sorry on the internet, right? Once it's there, it's there. So 58%. Maybe you should do this slide.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I always
58%.
forget what
No
the
worries.
percentage
I
is.
know it's a lot of numbers that they threw at us, but 58% of those who actually looked found something that
There you go.
ended up being unfavorable for the
Of
candidate.
consequence, yeah.
Yep, of consequence. Yeah, but more importantly, I think this number is very interesting. 42% said, I found something that convinced me they should be here.
Something good. Yeah.
Something good, right? And that is one of the, we've been watching this study for several years now, and it's one of the reasons why we talk about mastery. Okay, it's great if you want to make sure your kids are invisible, right? You want to make sure they're not showing to the public all the things they're doing all the time. But it's also not great to be necessarily invisible for the reasons that you might want to be known. So if your kids actually, even at younger ages, if they're already have things they like doing or are good at or aspire to do or just enjoy, there are ways to encourage good uses of the internet that maybe will end up helping them in that green 42% or whatever that number is down the road. And not just for their futures, but for others as well, for their own futures, but for all the benefit of others as well. So learning new skills, I think a lot of people did this. Did anybody bake bread? That was like a big thing during the pandemic. I didn't. I'm too impatient, but I did learn a lot of other recipes during the pandemic.
That's where the word pandemic comes from. The pan is bread, Lynette.
But
Yeah.
does Zoom have one of those? Drum roll?
Oh, no, Zoom doesn't have the drum roll effect. Rim shot.
Okay. Yeah. But promoting causes or raising funds for some organization that they care a lot about is also a great
Yeah.
use of technology and showcasing accomplishments. I mean, there is, if you, any student athletes, anybody have student athletes out there, kids, Huddle is the big app now, right? That's used by coaches when they want to showcase that to potential college coaches, blogs. You know, if your kids actually like to write or
Yeah.
draw or write poetry or make movies, you could actually post those online even now at younger ages behind a password. You don't have to make them public right away until they get older or they're willing to share that, publicly. But another one is, I'm a big fan of contests because that's a great way. I had a parent ask me once, my child loves making movies, but I'm not ready. He's not old enough to have his own YouTube channel yet. So, my advice was there's so many great contests out there for
Yeah.
kids who are great writers, movie makers, artists, performers. It's a great idea because you can build up a repertoire of what you've entered. Even if you never win, you learn how to work to a deadline, follow rules, maybe collaborate with others and so on. So these are just some examples. There might be others as well.
And even if it's not a contest, right? You can sing a song, and the next day, Journey signs you up as their lead singer because
There
they
you
saw you
go.
on YouTube.
Yes. So many of those stories. So we covered a lot of stuff today, and earlier this year, actually in October, just last month, we announced a number of modules for students called the Cyber Academy. They're really fun, short little videos accompanied by a Kahoot quiz. Probably better for the younger ones at this point, but it's still a good reminder, even for adults, on what some of these things are. So every module comes with an animated, very short video, a Kahoot quiz, downloadable activity sheet, and a conversation guide for you as parents. We have more modules coming soon, but we were excited to get this out the door in October. We also used to go into schools, but a lot of schools do not let us in right now because of where we are with the pandemic, and that's okay. But we would be happy if you were ever interested in having us come in, do a virtual session with your students. Dave and I have been doing it forever, so we'd love to do that. We loved doing it. I very much miss doing it. I miss seeing the kids. So keep it going. Stay actively involved in your kids' lives. Stay up to date on all that's going on, because those apps we showed you earlier, those won't be the same ones a year from now, even 6 months from now. I think there'll be new ones that we'll need to think about, and communicating with your kids, but also the other parents within your school, within your community, about the role of technology in your kids' lives. And finally, communicating with your schools, because they're probably using Google Docs or some other kinds of online spaces. So make sure you're aware what the teachers are asking them to use, and whether or not those sites are actually protective of them. As cool as some of them are, some of them are free, but the advertising is very aggressive on the sides there. Sometimes those ads are actually not appropriate for kids to be seeing either. So stay involved with how technology is being used in the classrooms as well. Oh, yes. Dave, what do you think about this challenge?
I love this challenge to do one new thing. I've seen some parents, after we've spoken to them, sometimes they don't know what an app is or does, but that they know their kids are using it. So they download it and they start using it in small groups just to communicate it with each other and figure out, what it's good for, what it's not so good for. So yeah, always good to do one new thing.
Yeah, whether it's try some of the settings we talked about, or maybe give Trend Micro Family a try. Sign up for an app that your kid hasn't used before. Turn on multi-factor in Roblox or Instagram or TikTok. Make sure you've turned it on, because most likely it's not on for a lot of them.
Yeah, revisit those security settings, those privacy settings, because they change all the time, and there's no email that goes out to every Facebook user that says, "Hey, we've changed security settings. Make sure you go update." Right? Because their whole model is just share openly everything. So you got to watch out for yourself.
So we'll take any other questions if there are any in the Q&A or in the chat. I think it's been a nice small group that we could handle that.
Yeah.
And we're also happy to unmute you, because it's not too big a group, so we could do that.
True.
Yeah, I don't know if Mignon is there. If we can unmute her.
Yeah, she's she's there.
Okay,
great. She can unmute herself, actually.
Oh, good.
I'm still here.
Great. Yeah, we're just gonna bring it home here with the resources, so we can put some of these links in the chat, and we invite you to come and take a look at our resources, tip sheets, blogs. We do this event. This event is actually, we're offering this multiple times a month, coast to coast. And it was great that we could have this as a private event for you. Normally we have, anywhere from 20 to 60 school districts on it at one time. So you got a special private event from us tonight, and you got a twofer. You got the two of us too.
You got Kirk and
I'm so very grateful, and I see that it is being recorded. how can we get the recording afterwards?
Absolutely. Yes, we'll send that to you. We will send that link to you so you can forward it on to your families. When you dial off tonight, there'll be a poll that comes up. So if you would please give feedback, but also if you feel optionally like including your email address, then you'll be automatically entered to win a copy of Trend Micro Maximum Security. So this is, again, security software that can protect your devices. I think this protects up to 5.
Yep.
Yeah, for a year subscription. So please give us your feedback. So
You can
there we are.
phone, laptop, desktop,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. Hey, that's us.
That is us. So and any questions, we'd be happy to entertain now. We could even unmute
Yeah, let's do that.
everybody.
Yep, allow to talk, allow to talk, allow to talk.
Everybody can unmute now if you want to. Don't be shy. We can hear you.
Oh, except for Carnes, who's using an older version of Zoom.
Oh.
Wah,
Really?
wah, wah. Oh, a couple of people are using old versions of Zoom. What did we tell you about updating tonight, people?
Update your Zoom.
No, it's
Update
okay.
your
If for
Zoom.
some reason you're not allowed to talk, then feel free to post in the chat. But most of you have your microphones available if you wanted to ask any questions.
We have Monica, who just unmuted.
Monica,
Oh, I just hit the button. Sorry.
hey, you passed the test.
No,
Well,
I
thank you
think
for
this was very good. I appreciated that it was a real thing. Sometimes I will read something online and just the answer is don't let your kids on screens, which isn't the realistic option. So
No.
I really appreciated this and getting some realistic suggestions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we're very pro-tech. We're very pro-tech. In fact, if any of your kids are interested, there is an enormous gap in cybersecurity professionals. If they ever think about going into an area of study, ooh, it pays well. And
Yeah.
I heard the number of jobs open in cybersecurity is huge, 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 huge.
Yep. As a matter of fact, that's one of the programs we run that I've led and I'm currently co-leading is we call it CPITS, C-P-I-T-S, Certification Program in IT Security. Now your kids are still a little young, but it's for college graduates, but just keep in mind that we take college graduates, put them through a 10-week intensive technical training, and they get all kinds of mad skills and industry certifications that will make their resumes look awesome. And we usually fish a handful of them graduating class out to work at Trend Micro. And our partners also feed off that. So it's a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in a career in cyber to get started, because you know the drill, right? You try to get your first job out of college and they say, well, you don't have any experience. How am I supposed to get experience? I was just in college for 4 years. So this is a bridge to help make that happen. It's another great program here. So
Yes, yeah,
put in a plug for CPITS.
absolutely. And feedback, just a question for all of you, since you're still with us, is there anything that you wanted to discuss that we didn't cover tonight? We want to make sure that we've covered everything that was on your mind, anything that we didn't address. Okay, well, great. I think with that, we will bid you adieu. And good evening. And we will make the edit pieces in out of it so that it's not doesn't have the banter that Dave and I were having at the beginning. Unless you want to see that again.
That's the best part.
We could leave it in. But we appreciate you reaching out to us. I'm glad we could make this happen for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there's if there are other people in your community that weren't able to be here tonight, we also have many events happening throughout the rest of the year. So maybe we could see your school district back again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing
Thank you.
custom,
You're welcome.
custom data.
Have a good night. Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Great to see you, Dave.
You too, Lynette.
All right. Have safe travels back from Texas.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. See you.
Bye-bye.